Well, thanks everybody for being here. We will hop in because we have only 20 minutes. So obviously, the word of the moment is kind of uncertainty, given tariffs and various policies coming out of the White House, and it's making business decisions very hard. Pause is kind of on everybody's mind. And I imagine that kind of impacts hiring. Is that impacting you guys?
Sure. So anyway, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Day One conference today. Obviously, I think the word that I kind of focus on that you shared is uncertainty. I think that I'm sure that's we're all living with that on a day-to-day basis. I work for a company called Avanade, which is a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. So we're really in the professional services tech space. Obviously, that's a space that has been struggling, I would say, over the last couple of years in terms of we experienced exponential growth coming out of the COVID pandemic, like I'm sure many of the organizations in this room today. And then we've kind of stagnated a little bit from a growth perspective. And so this kind of uncertainty from an economic standpoint, coupled with some of the political unrest as well, just kind of adds additional tension into the mix. From a hiring perspective, that means less hiring. So we've probably seen our hiring from the peaks probably drop around 50%. Wow. Globally. So I'm responsible for hiring in 26 countries today. And so keeps me and my team busy on our toes. We're seeing certain countries still on an annual basis kind of experience high growth, but from a US perspective, it certainly has slowed down quite significantly.
So on the prep call for this, you talked about peaks and troughs in terms of demand. Obviously, it sounds like post-pandemic, peak. Now, trough. Like, what does the trough look like? I'm curious about the US, the immigration, what's going on? What does right now look like for you?
Sure. So, right now, as we talked about in the first question in terms of uncertainty, this means that we're seeing, from a professional services standpoint, a lot of organizations are maybe being more prudent about their investment in kind of tech or transformation. We've seen a huge uptick in kind of our managed services businesses, which is where organizations are outsourcing kind of maybe some of their IT functions that they do today to ourselves rather than investing in consulting. So more on the kind of cost saving rather than on the transformative side of the business, which kind of is probably not surprising given the kind of economic situation that we're experiencing right now. What does that mean in terms of a trough? Is about how can we still kind of utilize the team efficiently and effectively to kind of have an impact on the business. I think a lot of us in TA love TA because it's really easy to draw a line between the work that we do and the impact that we have on the business. Other parts of HR, I think it's not as tangible, maybe to draw that correlation. And so how do we still kind of engage and motivate the team to feel like they are contributing to the business? A couple of things that I've done within my team is where we've seen kind of growth stagnate and maybe some of our client-facing talent's chargeability reduce. I've focused some of our talent acquisition professionals to actually support helping our internal chargeable clients relook at their own internal CVs. Because ultimately our professional kind of client-facing consultants need to kind of sell themselves to clients to become chargeable. So how can we kind of enable them to be more successful in those opportunities? So kind of refocusing some of the team to kind of support some of our scheduling and workforce planning to enable an increase in chargeability as a result. And it's proven to be super successful.
How long do you think you keep your people around before you have to say this trough is long and having them do something else isn't working anymore?
Sure. Yeah, it's difficult. Admittedly, I would say my global talent acquisition team's probably halved over the last 18 to 24 months. And that's been difficult decisions that I've had to make. It's the hardest part of being a leader. It's really easy to be a leader when everything's growing, and I find it really easy to be a leader in growth. You also get a lot of plaudits at those times. And in fact, the hardest part of being a leader is when you have to make some of those tougher decisions around the size and shape of the team and organization. However, I think we're all very well aware that even if we are experiencing more of a trough in this moment in time, that the peak will come, and it's about how do you prepare yourself for that peak. And so certain things that we do today, Emily, is we do a lot of like I call opportunistic conversations. So we might actually share requisitions that are clearly stated as opportunistic. So that role doesn't exist today, but it does give prospective candidates to have a couple of conversations with Avanade, a recruiter screen, and then one conversation with the business in order for readiness for when we do see that uptick in demand. Because when it does come, it's fast, it's furious, and Avanade is not the only organisation that will be in the market vying for demand. So how do we try and stay ahead of that curve? So that's one thing that we do to help us increase the conversion time once we do see that uptick in demand.
I mean, so I always experience this from the candidate side, right? And I feel like, oh, these companies have me in the supposed pipeline and I sit here forever. Like by the end of this, I hate them and I never want to work there. I'm curious, like how you make, sorry to all of you, how do you make sure that
they're all crying on the inside.
But how do you make sure that the candidates don't feel that these guys have been putting me through this rigmarole forever, and here I sit and I never want to work there?
Sure. I think you have to be, I always say clarity is kindness. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really important that, up front, you're very clear and set expectations of what this is and what this isn't. Mm-hmm. And then also what you can't have, Emily, is, I bring you in, I get you excited, and then you hear nothing from me for 12 to 18 months. And then suddenly I reach out saying, hey, Emily, we spoke. Do you remember me? And you'll be like, I don't want to speak to you again. We do. So what we do is once we've kind of had some of those initial conversations, I have what I call talent pool managers, mm-hmm. And they kind of manage talent pools. It's clues in the title. Uh-huh. And what they do is they make sure that we continue to kind of reach out, touch in on a periodic basis. We share news about what our company's doing and how we're progressing, mm-hmm. and just keeping tabs with kind of what's going on in their lives as well, so they feel like there's still an ongoing mm-hmm. kind of relationship being built. Obviously, some individuals drop out and say that that's not for them, and that's fine. But I would say we probably have around 2,000 people today that we're currently keeping warm mm-hmm. and ready for when we do see that uptick in demand, and that will significantly reduce our time to hire once we do see that uptick in demand.
And what proportion of those people you think when you come back around will say, like, yeah, I'm in? Do you have a sense of like how many from your pool?
I expect we'll hire 30% of that 2,000, so about 700 hires.
Got it, wow. Obviously you kind of mentioned it's a less tight labor market right now. Does that make your life easier in terms of talent and negotiating, like you have the cards a little bit more?
It's a good question. I think, I would say, obviously we're probably not having to be as speculative from a compensation perspective than we have done when the market is super hot and crazy. At the same time, typically when you do, I think maybe we certainly have experienced a lot less attrition within our own organizations. And so that means there's a lot less talent mobility naturally, which probably means that people are nervous and about being, last one in, first one out. And so from that perspective, I actually find it a little bit harder to attract talent, the talent that we want and need from their current roles into our organization right now because of kind of, I would say, fear or the fragility of the market. And so as a result of that, sometimes it does need more coaching, more coaxing to actually bring that talent into the organization at a time like we are experiencing today.
So people are basically nervous to jump at all, even if you think you have a better option. How do you convince them to hop over, to make that leap?
They get to spend time with me? No. I think it's different depending on what industry you're in. Obviously, we're in a technology professional services industry. Technologists get very excited about tech. They're geeky. tend to be geeky. And so one of the benefits that we have is that we're, I believe, the only kind of Microsoft Zero client, and because Microsoft have a 20% stake in us. So if you're super excited about Microsoft tech, we can offer you the opportunity to have kind of first hands-on experience of what's coming around the corner from a tech perspective. And together with that, our other parent is Accenture, and so we work on some really large, exciting projects and with Fortune 500 companies. And so the ability to kind of get cool tech and deploy it at cool organizations is attractive, but it's still, what we're still finding is it's taking longer to convert those candidates into employees because it takes longer to have that conversation and engagement. But the benefit of that is that once that talent does land, you're more confident that they're making the right decision versus a market where we're all hiring at such a fast pace. If we probably look back at how much of that talent that we hired when the market was crazy is still at our organizations, I think we'll probably be a bit disappointed because we probably made some less quality decisions than we typically would do normally.
Right, which is kind of what's been happening in the past couple of years in tech overall. Kind of everybody overhired and now kind of like whoopsie daisies. Do you think that's fair?
I'm not sure I still don't believe we overhired. I think we got overconfident that the market was going to continue to grow at the pace that we saw coming out of COVID. Avanade, since I joined Avanade in 2014, so coming up to 11 years now. When I arrived, we were a $1 billion business. We're now a $5 billion business. We've seen our business grow, I would say, 8 to 12% on an annual basis. The year out of COVID, we grew 37%. It was crazy. And everybody within the business suddenly thought this was the new normal. And so we all set our expectations that we were going to grow, not 37% again, but high 20s the following year. And it just didn't materialize. And so as a result, we've had to kind of, reshift our lenses. What I would say is I think as a TA leader, I probably could have been a bit more, I need to be more strategic about how do I grow my team to support those periods of peaks. And so, we have engaged conversation and more partnerships with some of those recruiter on demand models, so we can leverage. So I have a recruitment team today that kind of delivers my core hiring, which I'm really confident that we're going to deliver on an annual basis, given our 8 to 12% growth that we deliver on a year-on-year basis. And then everything, I would say, from 15% up is where we'd bring in some of those partnerships to help us manage some of that more dynamic hiring that we didn't have forecasted at the start of the fiscal.
Got it. Where are you seeing, I guess, a mismatch between kind of what Avanade needs and what sort of applications you're getting right now? Or are those pretty aligned?
I think the biggest mismatch in our industry is our continued focus on hiring someone on a Friday to do a job on a Monday. And so from my perspective, we really need to move away from hiring for performance and move to hiring for potential. The World Economic Forum produced a report earlier this year, and it shared that basically 40% of our employees that have a job today, they won't be doing that job by 2030. So hiring talent today for the work that they can do today is probably not going to set you up for kind of medium-term success. And so with that in mind, I think we need to shift our lens around to hiring for potentials. But what does that mean? That means looking at learning agility. It means looking at flexibility. It means having more onus on courage. Like people that are risk takers are willing to kind of, unlearn and relearn and unlearn and relearn again, because that's what we're going to be needing from our employees in the near term, and certainly in the tech sector where, I'm sure, everything just moves at such a fast pace as a result.
Do you think those are skills that you can also help people acquire? Like if I'm not a risk taker, do you guys think you can help people learn those kind of softer personality skills almost?
Yeah, I think they're harder to teach than technical skills. If I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I think it's really easy to, not really easy, it's relatively easy to teach someone how to use Microsoft Power Platforms. I could probably teach everybody in this room in a 6-week period, and you'll be dangerous enough to go out on a client and do Power Platforms. Trying to kind of rebrand someone's kind of internal DNA about how they work and how they operate, and how, at the same time, we want people to be themselves and their best selves when they come to work. It takes more time to drive that kind of those nuances. I think in an individual, it's a longer road.
Mm-hmm. And you guys operate in 26 countries, right? I mean, how do you navigate, I guess, the cultural differences there? Because how do you even begin to approach that, right? In terms of like personality traits or just like more innate traits?
Sure. I mean, yeah. So, yeah, I think it's something that you can't ignore. And I think that's something that is top of mind in terms of how we operate as a business and an organisation. And with that in mind, you do have to kind of I ask for flexibility in terms of the candidates, but we also need to be flexible in terms of how we take our approach into different markets. An example would be is we have kind of what we call the Avanade Academy, which is a route into our organisation, maybe for non-traditional talent, all being by non-traditional, so talent that may have not ever worked in the tech sector before, or they may have worked in the tech sector, but they're not worked on the Microsoft stack, and we'll invest in that talent up front to kind of reskill them to be ready to be a successful employee at Avanade. Depending on the market, we have different entry types. And what I mean, in some markets, we will hire people straight off the bat. So in Brazil, we'd hire people and then we'd train them and then we'd deploy them. In certain parts of Europe, we actually do it in a different order just because of the cultural norms. So in Italy, we would actually train. So we'd train them, we'd deploy them as a contractor, and then we'd convert them from a contractor to an employee at a later date, because that's more the cultural norm within Italy. So it just shows you how we still get to the same outcome, but we kind of flex our model and approach according to the country that we're supporting at that time.
Yeah, I obviously have to ask an AI question, but how are you using AI to kind of get through candidates, basically? See who you want to talk to, see who you think is not worth it.
Sure. Look, we're a technology company, so it's probably not surprised that we're leveraging AI at Avanade. I've been leveraging AI at Avanade, I think, for coming up to 3.5 years now, so it's not new from my perspective. We use AI in the talent acquisition process in a number of instances, but maybe before I touch on that, one thing that we do offer is we offer every one of our candidates to have either an AI-enhanced experience or they can opt out of an AI experience. So each candidate gets to make that choice. So that's something that we do offer at Avanade. I would say we see about 75 to 80% of candidates opt in for an AI experience, only around 20-25% opt out. For those that opt in, we leverage Hired Score, which is it's a year ago, bought by Workday. And that really helps us on managing our applications. I have a team of a couple of hundred people. We receive 250 to 300,000 applications a year for our opportunities. I'll give you an example. 2 weeks ago, I opened up 14 intern positions in the US on a Friday. By the Monday, we had 3,500 applications. So for us to have to manually go through each and one of those applications to manage the expectations of the candidate we just haven't got enough manpower to achieve that. And so what Hired Score will do is it will kind of grade those applicants on an A, B, C, or D basis. We won't let that tool make the decision, but that informs the recruiters. Then when they look at their resume, they can then make an informed decision of whether or not that they're right for the role or not. What we have found is that those that are graded A or B are somewhere, depending on the role, it's 2 to 6 times more likely to receive an offer for that opportunity rather than the C or D candidates for that opportunity. What does that mean? It means that we can be really focused around where we spend our time. and prioritise. At the same time, for those candidates that are maybe C and D and are likely to be successful in that role, we can bring them into our candidate community. We can talk to them about maybe looking at other opportunities that we have within the Avanade family that might be better set for their experience, and they might be more successful. So I think it's a win-win, and ultimately, from a candidate experience perspective, what all candidates want to be communicated with in a timely way, and so that does enable us to kind of make sure that we can get back to all of our candidates, which was something that we were guilty of not doing a few years ago. We do some benchmarking with the Candy Awards with the Talent Board. And basically they send out a survey to about 100,000 of our candidates, some of them being successful, some of them that were unsuccessful. The first year I got our results, I was so embarrassed. I was like, I can't share these with anybody. Because a lot of the frustration was about our inability to get back to candidates, and they felt like they were in a black hole, they're hearing nothing. HiredScore gave us the opportunity to make sure that every candidate hears back. Last year we won 4 out of 4 regions of Candidate Experience Awards. I would say that was probably the largest driver of us turning the corner, was just getting back to people. It seems simple. Look, I'm sure we've all had contractors at our house. You know when you phone a contractor to ask them if they can come and pitch for a work, they always answer their phone. When they're actually at your house doing the work, you see them on their phone answering those calls all day. But when they're not at your house and you call them and they ignore you, it's frustrating. And so, how can we make sure that all of our candidates hear back in a timely way?
Yeah. Well, I think we are out of time, but that's a great place to end. Thank you so much, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.